we hope the start to your week and your Monday was even better. I know Mondays are a little hit or miss, so if you're not having the best Monday, well, hopefully that changes all of that. Welcome into another Monday edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Got the whole crew together again with you to open the week. Mohammad Ahmad with you, along with Andrew Gillis and Mike Niziolek. Before we jump into today's order of business, which is going to be more fun, if not just as fun as what we did Friday, I want to remind you all to keep submitting your fan stories. What do I mean by that? Well, we want you, the fan, to tell us why you're a Bengals fan, and you got to do that by going to strictlystripes.com and clicking on the link that says, why I'm a Bengals fan. Tell us your story. Fill out the Google Docs form, and just really, I want to say, no promises, maybe in the next week-ish, week and a half, 2 weeks, we're going to actually not only start reading some of these responses, but we might have some of the responders on this podcast. Yeah, you heard me right. So if you want to get on here, have an authentic response and submit it at strictlystripes.com. So Friday, for those who didn't tune in, we ranked our top 10 wide receivers in the NFL from top to bottom. We each did our own lists. So I had a 10 through 1, Mike had a 10 through 1, Andrew had a 10 through 1, or vice versa, 1 through 10. And we had Jamar Chase, I think, for the most part, with exception to Mike. I had him at 4. Andrew had him around 5, I think. But we're going to do things a little different. Rather than what we're going to do today, actually, first of all, to set the stage, we're going to do coaches in the AFC. So we're going to do head coaches in the AFC. We're going to rank our top 10 coaches in the AFC. So rather than each of us having a top 10, we're going to do a draft-esque version of this where each of us will have a turn. We're going to pick a coach, kind of like we did with our top passing offenses in the AFC a few weeks ago. And we're going to defend our respective picks, maybe debate them with whoever disagrees. And that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to do a draft where we're going to draft the top 10 coaches in the AFC from top to bottom. Each of us are going to get our own pick. We're going to defend those picks just as if we're doing any other draft. So we are going to start at numero uno. And volunteering as tribute at numero uno with the first overall pick is Mike Niziolek. I feel like this is going to be an easy one. I'd imagine we'd all have the same answer, but Mike, just go ahead and give it away. Who is the best coach in the AFC right now, today, Monday, June 5th, 2023?
Well, I went with Andy Reid, the defending Super Bowl coach. In terms of, right now and longevity, I mean, I think you could make a case that he's one of the best coaches in NFL history, to be honest. He's 5th most NFL in wins. His record now with KC and he's going into his 10th season is pretty incredible. 710 winning percentage, 103 and 42, 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 Super Bowl wins, and obviously 4 straight appearances. The AFC title game. Obviously taken to Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of been the secret to their success, but that he's a big part of that as their play caller. I think that's something that has to be valued at the sort of the top of the list, that they have to be guys that call plays. But had success with Alex Smith too. I mean, he's made the postseason 8 out of his 9 seasons in Kansas City. And I believe 4 of those were with Alex Smith. So not just a one-trick pony. And then obviously his success with the Eagles, shows just great career he's had, but right now, play caller extraordinaire, offensive guru, has, coached the best quarterback in the league to multiple MVPs, and I think he's a big part of that success.
Just so you know, if you did not pick him, I would have forfeited one of your picks. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I would literally think we were all going to agree that it was Andy Reid. I mean, just to make sure I'm not crazy, you agree that Andy Reid is the best coach in the AFC, right, Andrew?
Yeah, that would have been, I mean, I think you just, I understand having Patrick Mahomes as a cheat code, but I mean, the stuff he does offensively is just so unique. And I mean, the success he's had both in Philadelphia and Kansas City, that's pretty undeniable. And if you're starting a 2023 season with any NFL head coach, I mean, I don't think it's just the AFC. I'm taking Andy Reid over anybody else.
I mean, you look at what he did with Donovan McNabb and all the players that came and went in Philly, from Brian Dawkins to Brian Westbrook, I believe, the running back. Yeah, all those guys, even Terrell Owens, which is still funny to me. I mean, you can give him average Joes, superstars like Patrick Mahomes, doesn't matter. I mean, like Mike said, they were making the playoffs a lot, almost every year with Alex Smith. I know they didn't make it as far as they did with Mahomes, but once he got that, I mean, he got the job done. And so I absolutely think, I mean, you could say he's one of the best coaches of all time for sure. So that was easy. Now this is where we start getting into our opinions and debates. With the second pick, Andrew, who do you have as the second best HC in the AFC right now?
Yeah, I think if you were to do kind of an all-time look, the answer is different. Most accomplished or best, even, I think I would say. I think my answer would be different. But going into 2023, if I can't have Andy Reid, the coach I want most, out of the coaches in the AFC is Mike Tomlin. I look at the career that he has had. He's been the Steelers coach for 16 years. He's been he was there when Ben was just a few years into his career. He's obviously outlasted Ben. He's only won a Super Bowl one time, and I know there are a lot of fan bases who will kind of hear that and go, only one Super Bowl. But the worst record that they've had in his tenure is 8-8, and they've gone that they've been 8-8 3 years. There was a stat, I don't know exactly the number, but the number of games that they have played in their, in the Tomlin tenure that have not had playoff implications is like 2 or 3. They every year they're always good. Think back to kind of the team that, you saw this year. They had a rookie quarterback. They were 1-4. They got down to 2-6. And they got blown out by Philly on the road, and it kind of looked like things were going to go off the rails. And then they strung some stuff together, and they were in the playoff chase at the end of the year. So, again, I just think that, I know, there are some Steelers fans a few years ago who kind of thought Tomlin should hit the road. But, again, if I need a coach for an NFL season, and I can't have Andy Reid, it's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin is just, he's so consistent. And for my money, I think he might even be underrated considering, the amount of people that would take a Kyle Shanahan or a Sean McVay. All Mike Tomlin does is win. And the worst you're going to finish with him basically is 500. So Mike Tomlin would be my pick, the second pick off the board.
Ooh, I will say you're not wrong about saying that he's underrated. I did not have him anywhere in your number 2, so you're bold. You are a bold man. But Mike, is that a bold pick, or do you actually think there's fair room to say that Mike Tomlin is a top 2, top 3 coach in the AFC right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's hard to separate. What he's done in his career, I think, is certainly more impressive than what necessarily he's done maybe lately. Obviously 2020. They were 12-4, but outside of that, they've been kind of a 500 team, but haven't dipped under. But his long-term success is impressive, and the way he's kind of held that locker room for that long. It takes a certain kind of coach. Doesn't call plays. Hasn't ever been really the primary play caller. For the defense. So I don't know. I think there's an argument to be made in his favor to be like top 5. I don't know if that I would have had him second, but I you can't go wrong. I mean, he's a guy that obviously commands the respect of players, and I think that's important.
That is a good assessment, and I don't disagree with either of that. I think it's just a matter of separating what he's done versus where he's at, and that's what I think makes this draft so fun but challenging, where I think there's no really, for the most part, there's no right or wrong answers. But I guess now that we're just jumping into number 3, this is an interesting one. I had to really ask myself if I wanted to do this, and I'm just going to say it. I think the third best coach in the AFC right now is John Harbaugh from the Baltimore Ravens. That might raise some eyebrows. That might not. I only say that because, look, I get it. It's been, 10 years since they had that Super Bowl team that won down in New Orleans. I understand that, but, and I get it. You have Lamar Jackson, too, who won MVP not long ago. I get that. But here's the thing. You look at what he's done and what he's capable of. I actually think had Lamar not gotten hurt, I guess it was, December against the Broncos. Had he not gotten hurt and they played the Bengals, nothing else changed. Either they played the Bengals in that game in Cincinnati in the wild card round, or they're hosting that game as AFC North champions, assuming things go a different way with Baltimore and maybe they win the North, I don't know. I think the Ravens could have made a decent run. Like, I mean, think about this. They almost beat the Bengals. They didn't have Lamar Jackson. I mean, Sam Hubbard, without taking anything away from the offense, like Sam Hubbard saved the day. And I mean, you got to remember, this team was the 1 seed not long ago. And just the guys that he's coached, I mean, he's coached Hall of Famers like Ed Reed, and he's not coaching, I don't think, any future Hall of Famers right now, unless, maybe Lamar gets that gold jacket one day. I don't know. But other than that, I mean, you look at what he's got and what he's capable of. Like, I think the Ravens, let's be real, I think they're very well going to compete for the AFC North next year. With Lamar's coming back, you got Odell Beckham. Their defense has Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. I know they lost guys like Chuck Clark, so they took a little bit of hit there. But I still think they're going to have a really good defense. I'd like to see what Lamar does with that offense. And you look at the coaches he's had by his side, like Greg Roman and Mike McDonald, among others. I think he is going to be in good shape. And I know I don't want to contradict myself. I know I mentioned that he's coached Hall of Famers back then, but I'm saying he coached it with those guys. He's coaching now with, I don't want to say average Joes because Roquan Smith is good. Patrick Queen is good. J.K. Dobbins is, I'd say, legit. Lamar is Lamar. So it's kind of like you mentioned with Andy Reid. Like, he has the cheat code with Mahomes, but he's just a good coach. I say the same with John Harbaugh, number 3. Was that a bold move that I made, or do you think there's a really good argument to put John Harbaugh number 3?
I mean, there's an argument for it. You look at the last couple of years, right? And I mean, the Ravens in 2022, they were 8-3. At one point, and I remember there was kind of a discussion like, hey, this team might be in contention for a number 1 seed or a number 2 seed in the AFC. Then Lamar gets hurt and kind of the wheels fall off and they finish 0-6. And it was more than just Lamar. I remember the Bengals played them in that game, and I mean, there were guys playing in that. I'm trying to think who started that game for the Ravens. Like, I don't know.
The regular season finale against Cincinnati?
No, this was in 2021.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're thinking 2 years ago.
Maybe? Like it was, or Josh Johnson. Like, it was a really, really, bottom of the barrel move for the Ravens. So he coaches good teams. I wouldn't have put him 3rd. I think there's a pretty clear answer for number 3 that we haven't said. So I don't know if Michael do it, but I mean, he coaches good teams every year. He's been around for a while. He's got a little bit of that, that Tomlin longevity to him. And, I think that there's a case to be made that he's, in the top 4, but I wouldn't have gone with him at 3.
So, Mike, who do you go with as the fourth best coach in the AFC right now?
Well, I think this coach has a chance to probably propel himself upwards this season in a big way. I'd go with Sean McDermott, the Bills. 62-35 career record. Postseason's not as good, 4-5, but he did take, obviously, the team to the AFC title game in 2020. It's hard to imagine that they had his first season that when they made the playoffs, that was their first postseason berth since 1999, which doesn't seem right, but it is. But that's a long time. But now he's going to be calling the defense with Leslie Frazier stepping down. Obviously, he's a defensive-minded head coach.
One of the few in the league.
Had success, with the Eagles and Panthers before arriving with the Bills. But now he'll call plays, so it'll be interesting to see what that does there. If if they continue on their success and he's play calling, that raises his profile in my mind. They've had 3 straight division titles, so beats the Bengals out. The Bengals had won the last 2, but they've won 3 in the AFC East. Only 1 losing season in 6 years, and at least 10 wins in the last 4. So I think he's done a really good job. Josh Allen has obviously been a big part of that, but their defense has obviously been very, very good throughout his whole time there. And obviously they got dealt a bad hand this year with DeMar Hamlin. I mean, I'm not sure how this season would have shaken out. And, that game continues, the Bengals win, whatever, but, obviously don't go through that emotional sort of experience. What would have happened in the postseason? I think everything would have been a lot different. So, I still think he's very good coach and has had a lot of success in Buffalo.
Andrew, is that the obvious case you were thinking of instead of John Harbaugh, or was it someone else? And you don't have to give it away if it was someone else.
It was someone else. We can just go right into 5 if that works for you.
Let's do it. I like it, man. Just go bold.
I actually had 2 guys that I would have taken above McDermott going into 2023. But yeah, I have to take Bill Belichick. I understand that, since Brady left, they have not been, the New England Patriots dynasty. But again, I think that there is kind of a misconception that dynasty was all Tom Brady. And I think the last few years haven't really done a favor to Belichick in that regard, because obviously we all have eyes and we've kind of seen what has happened there. It's been, the worst 3-year stretch, I think, since he's gotten there. So, that's obviously pretty significant. But again, he's one of the best coaches in NFL history. He might be the best. He might be the best coach in NFL history. Frankly, I don't know how you would want to compare, him to Vince Lombardi or to coaches like Chuck Noll and guys that are kind of Don Shula and guys that are in that kind of ballpark. But he's up there, and I have to take Belichick there. As a defensive mind, he's incredibly smart. I think, you still saw that, I think, kind of late in his career, even, in that Super Bowl against the Rams, which frankly sucked to watch. The second Super Bowl against the Rams, I should say. The Patriots won that game 13-3. The Rams were really talented offensively. They had a really good year offensively, and Belichick shut them down. He had a lot to do with, just schemes and stuff like that, but they were changing up defenses after the headsets went out. There was kind of a lot of talk about that. Like, Belichick still got it, and I'm surprised he went to 5. If I had, like, if the top 3 was Reed and Tomlin, I would have taken Belichick 3rd. And frankly, it was a tough pick.
I like that.
It was a tough pick for me at 2 to take Tomlin. But if I didn't take Tomlin at 2, I was going to take Belichick. So, Belichick at 5 that feels like a layup to me.
I think it's hard to say. I don't know if it's, he's the coach, right? So he's the decision maker. I think it's disqualifying to put him in the top 5 for this year right now because of the Matt Patricia situation last year. And,
sure.
I think that if you're talking all time, yeah, he's number 1 on the list. Andy Reid's right up there, but I just think that was such a bad move.
It was a horrible move,
and paid. Obviously did not work out at all. It's I'd have a hard time placing in that at the moment. But that said, he. How much do you factor his sort of, kind of runs the show, obviously. Is that fall under his coaching responsibilities? I do think it did, because he could have taken, obviously, the play calling away from him and not done that hire in the first place, gone a more traditional route that obviously he has now. So I don't know. It's hard. I just think that was a tough one to sort of get past.
Sure.
That is very hard.
We'll see this year. Bill O'Brien went to the Saban School of Wayward Coaches, and now he's back in the NFL. So I actually like Bill O'Brien. I like that hire. Not sure I like Mac Jones, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, that is a polarizing pick. Like, the way you said you'd put him at 3. If you didn't put him at 3, I would have put him at 7. Like, that's honestly where I would have put him. Like, if he was still on the board, as if we're talking about like a draft pick, like if he was still there, definitely would have put him at, or if he was on the board and I get to 7, like I would have put him there. But it's tough because, like, you think about, okay, how much of it is based on what he's done versus who he is now? We understand Brady's gone, but Mac Jones, man, I don't know. I'm not even going to open that debate up because that's a whole nother talk. But I'll tell you what's interesting is Zac Taylor is still on the board. He has not been picked. Will he get picked? Where will he get picked if he does? Stay tuned to find that answer when we return as we continue drafting the best AFC head coaches right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. All right, thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So we have already drafted the top 5 head coaches in the AFC right now going into 2023. And now we're drafting the bottom half of that top 10 list. Before we continue, we want to remind you guys to sign up for our Cincinnati Football Insider Subtext service. Go to cleveland.com/Bengals to sign up. It's a 2-week free trial to start. And we are going to keep sending our awesome subscribers text messages and updates throughout OTAs and mini camp. And OTAs kicks off in less than 24 hours from when we're taping this podcast. So if you want all those updates, make sure you sign up ASAP and sign up for our our Strictly Stripes newsletter on all things Cincinnati Bengals. If you want free news in your inbox on the Bengals from me, Mike, and Andrew, go to cleveland.com/newsletters and sign up for the Strictly Stripes newsletter. All right, so we're at number 6, which I guess that means it's my turn. So this is, again, it's interesting because my list that I had versus where we are is a little bit discombobulated, but I think this is going to be a toss-up pick, a very solid toss-up pick, I might add, for number 6. And I think the 6th best head coach in the AFC right now is Doug Peterson from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, you got to think about it. To go from winning a Super Bowl in Philly to just, I'm sorry to say it, and this is with respect to Nick Sirianni getting ran out of town, coming down to Duval, as they call it in Jacksonville, and taking a team that was the worst team in the NFL in back-to-back seasons, which is how they got Trayvon Walker and Trevor Sunshine Lawrence. And, of course, they got Travis Etienne as well, among other guys. But to do that, to come in and take that team to the playoffs, almost beating Mahomes at Arrowhead, I mean, who knows if that game could have gone if, they don't throw a pick with like 3 minutes left or Jamal Agnew fumbles the ball. I guess they both happened with 5 minutes left. Who knows? They could have been playing the Bengals in Cincinnati for a trip to the Super Bowl on the line, kind of like the Bengals did the year before when they made their Super Bowl run. I mean, obviously, that's a pretty good team. I mean, they got Christian Kirk, they have Trevor Lawrence, Walker, Josh Allen, who I covered at Kentucky, amazing guy who I think is getting better. So dealt a good hand, but it took a while to get there. I mean, you had to make the best out of it. And honestly, I wrote them off when they were 3-7. And then they beat the Cowboys on that crazy overtime win, and they just went out and they beat Tennessee in that Week 18 game. I think he does not get enough credit for what he's worth. And again, I'm trying to separate from what he did in Philly to where he is now. But I think the fact that he's won in Philly and that he's relatively winning in Jacksonville, it makes a case that not only do I think that the Jaguars are the favorite to win the AFC South next year, I don't want to call them Super Bowl contenders, but like I said, anything can happen in the playoffs. We almost saw that at Arrowhead. I got to put Doug Peterson at number 6. What do you all think? Yay or nay?
Yeah, that's a nay for me. I had 2 other guys, just like I think it was when Mike picked McDermott. I had 2 other guys that I would have taken above him. I think part of Peterson's success was you could basically nominate him for the Not Urban Meyer Award. That team basically in Jacksonville, they were just such a mess with Urban there, and now that Urban left. You could almost just say it was a progression to the mean. I mean, when you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of hard to not have a, to not be at least somewhat successful. Urban Meyer proved that it's possible, but it's pretty difficult. So, I think Peterson is kind of on the up and up. I think he's got a sweet gig for himself down in Jacksonville because, again, you're attached to the hip at Trevor Lawrence. You got to be feeling pretty good about yourself, but I have other picks that I would have made there.
Fair.
Yeah. And if you don't kick somebody, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
So for next, what is pick number 7?
Yep.
I think this is a good spot for Zac Taylor. Obviously,
okay.
Joe Burrow is a big part of their recent 2-year run. It's sort of inseparable, but he does call plays. I think this will determine this year if he goes up or down sort of in the coaching rankings, because hard to separate. I mean, does have the worst year out of any coach on this list so far, or at least in recent memory, with that 2-14 season. kind of barely hung on there for 11 the next year, but Burrow's injury kind of gave him a do-over there. So, they're obviously, 5-2 in the postseason the last 2 years. One play away from, getting back to the Super Bowl. It felt like so. Career record's not there, but I mean, obviously he's transformed the offense since Burrow's put in place. He's put a good system around his players in terms of like coaching staff and everything. But I think that he needs to have some continued success here to sort of keep climbing, because I do think he's handicapped by that first 2 years and the lack of success that they had.
That is okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna straight up say it because you already gave it away. I would have had him at number 9. I won't say who I had ahead of him with the other 2 picks, but I mean, like you said, this is tough because look, Joe Burrow's Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is Jamar Chase, and that defense doing what it did the last 2 years with Lou Anarumo, we've talked about that on like God knows how many podcasts. But I really do have a hard time looking at those first 2 years and saying to myself, can Zac Taylor have done all the things he's done without Joe Burrow? Or how much of what he's done with Joe Burrow can he do with someone else, whoever it is? Maybe not Andy Dalton, because I think he already reached the end of his prime by that point. But, I mean, I don't know, Derek Carr, any of those other quarterbacks we've talked about, Trevor Lawrence, I don't know. And that's why I would have put someone like Peterson ahead of Taylor, because I just really don't know how much of it is him versus Joe Burrow being Joe Shiesty. But, like, I mean, Andrew, do you like that pick? Would you have put Zac Taylor at 7? Do you think he should have been a little lower like I thought? Like, what's your take on that?
No, I'm okay with Zac Taylor at 7. I just, I mean, frankly, again, we'll just jump right into my pick. I would have taken Mike Vrabel. I think after Belichick at 5, I would have gone with Vrabel at 6. I, as well as everybody else, have watched Mike Vrabel kind of turn a whole lot of into a lot of times really, really strong teams. You're talking about a guy who, he's been in the NFL for 5 years. For the first 4 years of his head coaching tenure, did not have a losing record. He led the Titans to a number 1 seed. He took them in, that was the 2019 season, to the AFC Championship game. They went on the road and they beat the Patriots in Foxborough. And then they went on the road and they beat the number 1 seeded Ravens the year that Lamar won MVP. And then they were, in the game in the second half against Kansas City the year that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. Like, I've kind of watched him, like everybody else, like I said, drag a team without a ton of stars. Like, nothing against Ryan Tannehill, but Ryan Tannehill is really not even close to the level that a Joe Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen is at. And this past year, he had Malik Willis at quarterback, and that was kind of a mess, and that was very clearly a long-term project that kind of had to get accelerated. You have Derrick Henry, but you had really no wide receivers to speak of. I know they had A.J. Brown a few years ago, but you move on from him. It's just, they've always kind of done things in a way where, the
His head scratching.
Well, no, it's not that. That's not what I'm saying. It's the, the defense is greater than the sum of its parts. You're talking about a team that runs the ball well with Derrick Henry. They play great defense. And I mean, again, there's not a Von Miller on that team. There's not an Aaron Donald on that team. And every year you just always look at the Titans and say, wow, they're incredibly physical. They're incredibly well coached. And I think he'll be back. I think the Titans are in a bad way right now. A lot of stuff going on with, the front office. They fired their GM, in early December.
They're in cap space hell.
Yeah, they're in cap space trouble with Ryan Tannehill.
They cut Taylor Lewan.
I wouldn't. I mean, frankly, if I was a Titans fan, I would be praying that they suck and watching every USC game, hoping Caleb Williams becomes available to you with the number 1 pick. But I think the Titans are on the up and up, and frankly, I think if getting Vrabel at 8's crazy, but I don't think that this is insane to say that if we did this in 2 or 3 years, maybe Reed's gone, maybe Belichick's gone. I mean, we could be talking about a top 3 NFL head coach. I'm very high on Mike Vrabel.
I don't know.
I actually had him at number 8 too.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Mike.
Survive next year though.
But I think he's kind of done enough to give himself some goodwill, and I think there is kind of an understanding of like, okay, they draft Malik Willis, and that was obviously much more of a project than they thought, or at
They're
least
talking about cutting him.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
He's not the answer.
Well, right. So they draft him in the third, and now granted it was a 3rd-round pick. So
and now they draft Will Levis, which is another interesting pick.
Yeah, and then again you draft him. I mean, they have Traylon Burks at receiver, but then I don't know. Like one of these years, Derrick Henry is going to fall off the cliff. It's just, I mean, he's kind of defying.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, he's defying the laws of science by doing this every year. Which, I mean, it's a credit to Derrick Henry, but like one of these years, it's not going to work. I just think that Vrabel has bought himself some time because it's not his fault that AJ Brown is gone. It's not his fault that, that Ryan Tannehill has kind of regressed, like just because of age. Like, I just think that Vrabel's bought himself some time, and I'm frankly, I'm pretty confident that, in a few years he'll have them kind of back at the top of the AFC.
I would be surprised if he makes it through their cap situation.
Yeah, Mike makes a good point, but it's funny. If literally I was at number 8, that's who I would have picked too. Like I had him on my list that I have. I had him at number 8 because, like you said, I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Sorry to all the Titans fans if there's any listening to this podcast. You guys have a dysfunctional franchise with a lot of head-scratching decisions. I mean, GM just got fired. You're in cap space hell. You go from Tannehill to Malik Willis to Will Levis to potentially Caleb Williams, depending on what happens next year. And then Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry. But then from there, it's just like they've just been a weird team. Like, I mean, they were the number 1 seed a year ago, and then they lost 7 straight to literally choke out of the AFC South. Granted, they lost 6 straight and just needed 1 win. Needed to win 1 game, that 1 game against the Jaguars in Week 18, and they would have been the ones hosting the Chargers. But that didn't happen because not Mike Vrabel, maybe to an extent, but not completely Mike Vrabel. Just think that is a very dysfunctional franchise. So, in light of that, I guess what we're at number 9, which means it is my turn, right? Is it?
Yep.
Is my turn now? It is my turn. Okay. So again, this is with regard to my list being shuffled. I'm just going to say it. I think the 9th best head coach in the AFC right now is Sean Payton. Again, this is a tough one because we have never seen him coach in the AFC. I mean, he's only been the head coach of the Denver Broncos for what? Not even 3.5 months, maybe 4. I think we're probably 3.5 months is the better guess. Look, I get it. The Russell Wilson situation's weird. The Broncos situation in general is just weird. But look, I don't know. Maybe he's the answer. Maybe that's what Russell Wilson needs, whether he likes it or not. Maybe that's what the Broncos need, whether they like it or not. And I'll be honest, they got a pretty good defense. Like, with how horrible they were last year, not many bad things you could say about that defense. Like, it was, I think, top 10 in scoring defense? I think maybe not top 5, but it was definitely top 10. So maybe you build on that. I get it. Vic Fangio is more of a defensive guy. That's why he's the Dolphins DC now, which is actually, that's going to be really good for them, the Dolphins. But I don't know. I just really think Sean Payton's got something left in the tank. And much like Andy Reid, I get it. He had a cheat code with Drew Brees and a lot of the other good players they had, like Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Cameron Jordan, whoever else you want to talk about on that team that was and still is really good. I just really think, I don't think the Broncos will make the playoffs, but if he can get them to 9-8 or 8-9, I mean, because they were 4-13 last year, that's great. And who knows, maybe that's going to be the setup of the Broncos being, they're not winning the AFC West. You got Patrick Mahomes, but maybe a wild card team? I don't know. Do you think I'm maybe going on a limb here because we've never seen him coach in the AFC, or what do you guys think of that?
I just think it's hard to say. Russ, the Russ situation. I mean, what happens if Russ is cooked? No pun, I guess no pun intended. That was unintentional. I promise. I genuinely mean that. But like, what happens if Russ is done? Like if Russ's kind of productive playing career is over, I mean what then? So I don't know. We'll I guess we'll find out how good of a coach he really is if Russ is if Russ is in trouble kind of long term. But yeah, I just think it's too early to say right now. That I thought about it, I just left him off because I didn't. To me, it was kind of unfair to put him above some guys who I'm a little bit higher on moving forward.
So my last pick then.
Yep.
That's you. Save the best for last, Mike. That's you, my friend.
Yeah, I would go with number 10 is Mike McDaniel from the Dolphins. They had a kind of a crazy year last year with Tua, still managed to make the playoffs, still managed to have a winning record. Obviously an offensive guy, sort of an interesting character. They have a very interesting offense. And I think the speed that they have and all the weapons they have, that could be a fun team to watch and see how it all kind of gels. And he could really, if he makes that all work and finds something that they can kind of take it to another level this year offensively, he'll be, everybody will try to be modeling after what he's done or what they've tried to do. He's, the play caller as well, which like I said, I think there's some value in that to sort of being part of that top 10. And so that's who only 1 year of experience, but intriguing and I think better than sort of the rest of the options at the number 10 spot.
That is, I don't know. I really don't know how to feel about that. I don't even know if I feel anything. Do you feel anything about that, Andrew? Because I'm still processing that.
No, that's fine. I think you're kind of I think you can kind of put these guys in the same bucket. McDaniel, I would put with Stefanski, who I would put with Robert Saleh,
Robert Saleh.
I think, when people talk about the Chargers, personally, I'm a big, quote unquote analytics guy, but I don't know how good Brandon Staley is at kind of implementing that, but I think he's kind of around. I think it's just personal preference. I would have gone with Saleh, just because you look at kind of where this team was a few years ago. His record has not been good, but also neither has the quarterback play. The defense has kind of turned around. Not only did it turn around, they became, frankly, one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I like Saleh at 10, but I'm not necessarily, beholden to it. So I think McDaniel's a fine pick there.
I'm probably gonna get a lot of crap from both of you for this, but I would have gone with Brandon Staley. Honestly, I would have gone with him.
Yeah, again, like they're in the same bucket. That's fine.
Well, I only say that because I thought you were gonna bring up the 27-0, whatever that lead they had that they blew in Jacksonville. I thought you were gonna maybe bring that up. That's why I was on the fence with him. But I don't think you can put all that on him. I'd put it more on their defensive coordinator, who pretty sure he got fired, right? From that after that game. I have to think. I don't even remember who that was. I should know because it's actually a very known name in the NFL, but I'd have to double check on that because that is really weird. But anyhow,
Kellen Moore now.
He's their offensive coordinator, right?
Their offensive coordinator. So I don't know if they did anything defensively. I would have to look.
Yeah, I would have to look at that because that's just at that point you're playing with a lot of names. But I like Justin Herbert. I think a lot of his own talent is his own talent, but at the same time, I just think that they still have Austin Eckler, they've still got Keenan Allen, they got some pretty decent guys on defense like Derwin James and everyone in between. Khalil Mack, who I know he's nowhere near what he was in his prime, but I think he's still a very good player. And again, up until that literal dud of a game I mentioned. By the way, they actually did fire him. He was replaced by Derek Ainsley, who's their new defensive coordinator. He was their DB's coach. Now he's their coordinator. So, yeah, he was fired, understandably so. So it shows you they didn't blame Staley. They blamed the DC. So that game aside, I think the Chargers have one of the best offenses in the league. Again, I don't think anybody has a chance of beating out the Chiefs for the division, but I definitely think the Chargers can get back to the postseason. and they can maybe make not a deep run, but certainly a deeper run. So my 2 cents there. I guess that's my honorable mention. I would have probably put Kevin Stefanski as an honorable mention as well. And I will maybe actually say if he does well next year with Deshaun Watson and that team they have, I think he can definitely crack the top 10. But just to kind of wrap up here, how high on the list can Zac Taylor jump if the Bengals do God knows what next year? I guess really the better question is, can he become a top 5 coach after next season?
Well, in the AFC or in the league?
In the AFC, yeah, in the AFC.
I mean, I think so. Obviously, because I think he could do that even if they don't, win the Super Bowl or, they don't kind of make a run because, what happens if the Bills bow out? What happens if the Bills bow out in the wild card round or the divisional round or something like that? What happens if the Ravens, take a step back or, the Patriots miss the playoffs again or, the Jaguars fall back. Like, I just think that there's kind of other options there. Like, I would be more surprised if the Bengals miss the playoffs than if the Jaguars miss the playoffs or the Patriots miss the playoffs. I just think that, another year of doing this, I mean, I understand, it's going to get a lot harder soon, but you reach a trend, and I think it's kind of undeniable at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I mean, another trip to the AFC title game. I mean, that's rarefied air, 3 straight AFC title games in a row in terms of like the current landscape of coaches. And I'd have no problem, moving above some guys if he was able to do that. Especially offensively, if, things look more like that winning streak to end the season than it did at the start of the season last year.
I agree. I think even if he makes just the playoffs again, and if they win a divisional title, I mean, the Bengals have never won back-to-back divisional titles. They never won back-to-back titles till last year. So if he does that, God forbid they lose in like the first round of the wild card round. I mean, even then, there's still a case, especially if Joe Burrow has an even better year next year. So I think we'll get the verdict on that here once the season is underway. And hard to believe 3 months, which is crazy because time is flying, which is why OTAs are almost here. And we're going to break that down for you tomorrow when we're, at the stadium. We're going to get our insights and our thoughts and our biggest takeaways. We're going to break those down for you right here on the podcast. But once again, for myself, Andrew, and Mike, I'm Mohammad Ahmad. Catch you on Tuesday.